Hello, everybody. It's still Sunday, the 7th of August, and I want to talk about humanity's spiritual development and how we can see it in the stories of humanity and the impact that the Judeo-Christian teaching had on our spiritual development. So, first of all, I want to talk about, sometimes you think, what the hell is going on, because we are intelligent beings. We know that. Yeah? And then you see how, what humanity is capable of doing, which for the most part is against our conscience. Yet there are people being driven into doing these things in wars, through greed, through I don't know what. So what's happening there? Well, what we call intelligence is for the most part head knowledge. Yeah? And a human being, I think, is capable of three kinds of intelligence. There is the head knowledge, there is emotional knowing, intuition. It is a form of intelligence. It derives its knowledge in a different way than the head, not through reasoning but through feeling. But it is a form of intelligence of its own. And then the highest intelligence that we are capable of is spiritual intelligence, which is when the two come together. And for the most part, most of humanity has not operated on that level of spiritual intelligence. Right, and I want to talk about the Judeo-Christian teaching and make you see what that story actually does to your spiritual being and to your spiritual intelligence. It was, for the most part, through all of the Old Testament, exerting two forces on us that we believed on, we let in through that story, and that was fear and guilt. Those are restricting forces, yeah? And we've been through that story, actually, and then through what they created in reality, those that were kingship and priesthood, that are actually also working on those two principles. Kingship, again, fear of punishment, guilt, retribution and punishment. Kingship works on this part of you. Priesthood, religion, works the same two forces on your emotional knowing. Yeah? So they're fully covered. They've got you. And it is from the story in the Bible, at the start in the garden. I mean, it starts there. Yeah? That when Adam and Eve started to ask questions and felt the need for wisdom, Eve felt the need for wisdom. That's why she ate of the tree. Yeah? That was an awakening. Yeah? That was like we have now. I mean, this story is continuously happening over and over and over again. That's not a one time. It is when we wake up. So according to that story, that was the first time it happened. But it happened many times after that. Where you start to ask questions. Where your rational mind, and Eve is the rational mind, says there's something wrong. I need wisdom. Well, we need information. We say now we need information, we need wisdom. We definitely need wisdom. And then the rational mind gives that, the apple, to the emotional knowing. And the emotional knowing agreed. Yeah, and she did not shove that apple down its throat. It just agreed. And then they both knew each other. They became one. And that between the two of them, then they were one spiritual being, one spiritual knowledge. And for that, they got kicked out of the garden. And then there was a thought of guilt attached to that. Yeah? The fact that they started reasoning for themselves, there was guilt attached to that. You don't reason for yourself. Don't do that. The Lord God won't have it. And as I said, and fear. They were in fear of, again, retribution and punishment. And that is throughout the entire Old Testament, those two forces. Yeah? That when they impact us, create an imbalance. Yeah, we should not be in fear and guilt. Afraid and guilt-ridden through our entire lives. That's not how it should work. We have tons of other emotions. But that creates an imbalance, and that prevents spiritual intelligence. Yeah, we're not firing on all cylinders emotionally. So, I say through the Old Testament, and the light that led them through the wilderness. Again, that was a spirit. They were led by a spirit. And as I said, spirits are emotions. They were led by fear. They were led by fear. And then, in the end, well, Joshua obviously started to understand, the workings of fear, and made it Lord. Elevated the emotion of fear to become the driving force, the ruling force. Then comes this New Testament, and pastors are sitting there at Satan is the ruler of this world. Yeah, well, Joshua declared Lord. Joshua declared fear and, guilt. Guilt is always there. Since the original sinner were all born without guilt, so that's always there. But those are satanic forces. And I'm not saying satanic as in they are bad. They're not. It's just the label. They can do good. You're just not supposed to be in them all the time. And then comes the story of Jesus. Here comes compassion. Not to create balance, just to create imbalance, again, in a different way. Yeah, because you have, obviously, to condemn your lower nature, the lower emotions. And how does that story end? Really, what people take from it in the end, at the moment. And it is true, that is what he said. You cut yourself loose from everything, face all possibilities, and you will be given. Anything is possible. Which I believe to be truth. But what do you do with that? Yeah. So, we can see the outcome of that thinking in this world. It's the woke crowd. Yeah, cut loose from anything and everything and just be whatever you are. And it creates chaos. Yeah, and the structures are falling apart around them. Some of them quite literally, physical structures. Everything is going to hell. Why was that teaching allowed? I mean, for the first part, the church brought it back to, feel guilty about this. You've been driven back under guilt. He died because of you. It's all your fault. But, I mean, somebody caught on to something there. And that is, the oppressive forces, and there's a lot of people that are always under the oppressive forces, and you don't have to worry about them because they're doing what they're told, under fear and guilt. No problem. The problem are those that keep waking up and keep going off. So what do you do with them? Give them this teaching and let them go. That's what you do with them. And it will produce exactly what it's producing in this world at the moment, wokeism. And it will be destructive in the end. And then those sheep will come home with their tails between their legs. Yeah? They will come home with their tails between their legs, having to admit that they're not gods. Yeah? We thought we were gods, but no, we need to be ruled over. I mean, you already got the crowd under fear and guilt that never got out of it, so they're fine. And now the woke crowd will come back having to admit that they're not gods. Well, no, not if you're not firing on all cylinders. No, you won't be. So what do we do with this teaching? It is given to create an emotional imbalance in us, which will keep us from our true spiritual knowing as spiritual beings, which is the highest form of intelligence that we've got, that we haven't used since I don't know when. So what we do is we look through that, and as God does himself, takes out the nuggets of our knowledge that will serve him, we take out the nuggets out of that will serve us. And that is the knowledge of ourselves. Because we can see it in that book. It's given us a knowledge of our fear and how it, what it can do, and then how it can be used and how it shouldn't be used. We can learn about ourselves. We can learn about our compassion and what that can and cannot do and where its boundaries are. That's a knowledge of ourselves. That is an awareness of our forces. And in that way, if we do that now, will actually lead to a spiritual development in us. Yeah? So what was meant for bad, which it absolutely was, can actually be turned into good if we use that teaching in the correct way. So, and what do we do with this pinnacle of sons of man? What do we learn from that? I mean, apart from the knowledge of compassion. I mean, he brought a knowledge about how to interact with the all. Yeah? That we can use. That knowledge we can use. He, in a way, showed us that we are all possibilities. We have all possibilities. But if you are of sound mind, yeah, then you understand out of that teaching and out of yourself that there must be restricting forces to create balance. Again, there is something we can learn. This is something we haven't got a hold of at the moment. You know, we're being told to judge one as good and the other as bad. We can learn that they're both necessary, which again, you know, brings a new spiritual knowledge of ourselves, an understanding of ourselves. I mean, this thing can actually evolve us. The knowledge is in there and it's been hidden in there. We need to price it out and use it in the correct way. And I said, but this moment when Jesus says, you know, before you there are all possibilities and you are completely free, we should use that knowledge of freedom, or that feeling of freedom. And as I said, what they're doing at the moment is they're saying that is it. Yeah, that is the end of evolution. There is the perfect being. It's not the end of evolution, but it is the moment where you realize that you can be completely free. And as I said, the thought or the realization that there need to be restricting forces. And out of that, where should those restricting forces come from? What do you allow to rule over you as a restricting force? Or what do you allow to work in you as a restricting force? Because you have free will. Yeah? I mean, the Bible tells you it needs to be God. There is only one God and He needs to come because humanity has been shown to be completely incapable. Yeah? I mean, again, those that were under fear and guilt knew that all the time anyway, that they were nothing and completely incapable. But now, even those that try to fly, yeah, even those were shown now that they are useless. But as I said, we were never allowed to be our own full potential. So what is it? Where is this restricting force coming from? Or again, does it need to be something outside of ourselves? Does it need to come from outside of ourselves? Before this teaching, before humanity's spiritual knowledge was screwed, we were within nature. And yes, nature itself, the law of nature, did bring restricting forces. But, and here's the but, within nature, when we were in nature, we were ourselves. We were the fullness of ourselves. We were not asked to suppress one part or another. We can, and I think, not, again, personal opinion, I think we should return. We should return to nature and the understanding of nature. It was our teacher before all of this kicked off. And I think we should return to it. And in a way, what happened through that teaching would mean, I said, we can turn that into good, because we can return to the understanding of nature with a greater understanding of ourselves. Because there are the two parts, you know. There's the I am, and then there's everything else. And we're still learning about everything else. Nature will teach us that. But we're returning with a greater knowledge of the I am. And this is the last thing I want to say, and that is, yeah, how do we connect back to nature as a spiritual being? As a spiritual being, not just in the material, dissecting plants and animals and stuff and learning in the materialistic way, but as a spiritual being. How do we connect? Because everything is spirit, and spirit can connect to spirit. So, and again, to connect on a spiritual level, we need to use one of our spirits to connect. And again, we've learned about fear, we've learned about compassion, which are our outer edges, really. So, but what spirit will connect us back to this earth? And here, my opinion, nothing more, I think that spirit is empathy. We should go with empathy. Not, again, forsaking all the others. They will serve us in circumstances. But I think our, what we should concentrate on, you see, it is, you have more than two dogs inside of you. You have a lot of dogs inside of you. And, which one should you feed the most at the moment to make it stronger? And I think that is empathy. Anyway, I leave it at this for today. And I really hope that I didn't make it sound like this is something far out there. Because that is one of the biggest misdirections in those teachings. You think it's in heaven, or it's, something that is not here. You are just a lump of flesh. And this is talking about others and other things. Understand that it is talking about you, and you're not just a lump of flesh. What you see as a lump of flesh is you reading an energy. It's your body reading an energy, a spiritual energy, and it interprets that as a lump of flesh. So, no, it's not far out. It's right here, it's right now, and it is you and me and everybody else. Anyway, I leave it at that, and I talk to you again soon. Bye.